Hey there, folks. Welcome. Today, my guest is my friend Dinesh D'Souza. I got to tell you, Dinesh, most people listening to this program, watching it, they already know you. I've known you for years, but what you've been saying lately has really grabbed my heart. I've been really thrilled to be following you on social media, to hear you bravely speaking against the diabolical madness of anti-Semitism in our culture, calling out Tucker Carlson. You and I both, I think, were astonished to see that he would do something as sick as to platform Nick Fuentes. It's so strange to me that happened. But it gets worse and worse. You've been really bold in speaking against this. What's the latest? What should we be thinking?
Well, I think with Tucker, you're dealing with a pattern, because had he essentially lost his guard, lost his mind, had a single bad evening, so to speak, and just kind of let Nick go on, by itself, I don't think it would have provoked the kind of outrage it did. But when you see what Tucker has been up to really for the past several months, you realize that something much larger is going on. I mean, it's uncharacteristic of even the old Tucker, right? The old Tucker would not have praised Sharia law as having some good social benefits. The old Tucker would not say that Hamas is not really a terrorist group, but a political movement. The old Tucker would never have come to the defense of Nicolas Maduro, the socialist narco-terrorist dictator of Venezuela. So all of this is so unexpected that something larger is afoot. And the Nick Fuentes episode is part of all that. I think the importance of you and I speaking out is that we're not Jews. You know, Tucker would love to have it be Tucker and Candace against Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin, because then he gets to say, look, it's the Jews I'm going up against. But we are very awkward for him because we're Christians. We've done a lot of work in history and apologetics. We actually know what we're talking about. So we're a great embarrassment to the theological and political absurdities that have been put out by Mr. Tucker Carlson.
Well, listen, again, when I wrote my book on Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I have to say, I simply never dreamt that we could get to a place, because I grew up, my parents were in World War II. The history, it seems so recent to me. So the idea that we would be far along enough that we would see a rise again of anti-Semitism, it was unthinkable to me. So to see the rise of it and so on and so forth is bizarre. But to then see people that we would think of as allies in the conservative movement take the most bizarre turn and say things that are, I think what gives me confidence in saying what I'm saying, Dinesh, is that a lot of times I'm well aware of my own ignorance. I think, well, I must be missing something. Maybe she has a point. Maybe he has a point. I'm missing something. But in this case, both Candace and Tucker have said things that I know are completely wrong. In other words, we're putting aside subjective stuff. We're putting aside, well, they come out in a different place. I'm talking about if you assert 1 + 1 = 3, I want to say, excuse me, stop right there. Stop. I happen to know 1 + 1 = 2. Once you agree with me on that, we can move forward. They have both said things that are preposterous, that are mistaken, that are confused, and that are confusing to other people who are ignorant, other people who don't really know how to push back because they think, well, Tucker has always made a lot of sense. I'm sure he's making sense right now. Candace has been heroic in the Brexit movement. Surely she is, she has a point. Both of them have said things that, again, I know are absolutely wrong, tremendously ignorant. And that's at the moment. I mean, when Candace Owens is accusing good friends of mine, like Pastor Rob McCoy, Mikey McCoy, Erica Kirk, Frank Turek, of somehow being in on a plot to murder my friend Charlie Kirk. I thought, this is so preposterous and so sick. She and Tucker have both been guilty of saying things that I can say with confidence are deeply wrong and need to be corrected. I guess I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, in my view, the two of them are quite different. And by that I mean with Candace, she has, it seems, taken the conspiracy mindset to a kind of reductio ad absurdum. And she's realized in the process that this kind of, quote, reasoning is actually highly entertaining. I liken it a little bit, Eric, to midget bowling. And by that I mean that if you walk into a bar and there's midget bowling going on, you don't really want to look. It's sort of disgusting, but you can't look away because there's a midget flying down the aisle headed for the pins. It's like there's a certain magnetic, irresistible, although perverted, appeal to it. And I think Candace has sort of fallen into that niche and sort of likes to live there. So every day it's something new. And it's something equally preposterous, and one absurd theory is replaced by another. I don't think you can actually take it seriously in the end, and no one really does. Tucker's a little bit of a different matter, because I think with Tucker, he's been around 35 years. He does know better. He knows better in the political realm, and he also knows that in the theological realm, he knows that he doesn't know. In other words, he's himself said, I don't really know the Bible. And he says, I've read some of it for the first time. And so for someone in that position to then proclaim something like, well, Christian Zionism is one of the oldest and most pernicious heresies. Well, if this is not your area, you would know that, first of all, that's not even true, right? You and I could name a lot of the ancient heresies. Christian Zionism is not one of them. The Manichaeans, yes. The Arians, yes. The Docetists, yes. The Arminians, yes. But here's Tucker absolutely pronouncing definitively on subjects he knows literally nothing about. So something is up. And I think ignorance doesn't really do it, because Tucker knows enough to know what he doesn't know.
Hey there, folks. As hard as it may be for us to believe, especially if we're in America, there are people in other parts of the world who have literally been enslaved because of their faith in Jesus Christ. Some of them for decades. Hundreds of thousands of them have been persecuted and enslaved in the Sudan. Together, right now, we can literally buy their freedom and save the lives of some precious brothers and sisters, give them the joy and hope we celebrate so freely. For only $250, you can provide life-saving aid this Christmas. You can buy a believer's freedom and provide them with much-needed food, a goat, and other necessary goods for their survival. Brothers and sisters enslaved and fearing for their lives, just $250. Maybe you can give more. Maybe you can just give a portion of that. Every gift helps. Imagine buying the freedom of a fellow Christian believer. You can do it. Call 888-253-3522, 888-253-3522. Christian Solidarity International provides life-saving resources for persecuted Christians for almost 40 years, 888-253-3522, or go to ericmetaxas.com and click on the banner. You'll see it, ericmetaxas.com. Click on the banner. Please give someone the gift of getting their life back. Provide life and freedom for someone right now. God bless you. Now, that's interesting, because I'm not sure that I would agree with you. I'm not disagreeing either, but I'm what fascinates me. I mean, I the only time I ever had much of a conversation with Tucker, except when I was on his show, was a number of years ago. And I realized at that moment that he doesn't, if he is a Christian, he's ignorant. And I'm not using the word pejoratively, but he's ignorant of most of the shibboleths, the basics of the faith. When I came to faith around age 25, suddenly you're surrounded by people who help you think about, well, if you're a Christian, then this, then this, then this, and that. And you start pulling together a worldview, start understanding the Bible. You don't just read the Bible yourself and interpret it as you like. You're looking for a consensus of What am I supposed to think? Is it okay for me to have 3 wives? Oh, no. 1 wife. Sex outside of marriage? No. How do we feel about Israel? Do we hate the Jews? Oh, no. We love Israel. There are so many things that if you care about what it means to be a Christian, you humbly submit yourself to the consensus of serious Christians. And what I realized with Tucker, and I'm realizing it now, he does not seem to have any people around him giving him sage advice in terms of, so what should we think about Israel? Whatever. I mean, I quoted on X yesterday, Psalm 105. It talks about God making an everlasting covenant with his people, that this land belongs to them, the land of Canaan he's giving to them. It's an everlasting covenant for 1,000 generations. And I thought, has he not read that? I mean, when he's putting Ted Cruz on the spot, does he have a staff to help him with this? Why is he so arrogantly making it sound like there's nothing in the Bible that would suggest this? I just find it frankly bizarre. So you seem to have some explanation for it, but I find it absolutely bizarre. He's clearly speaking out of ignorance, but he's not afraid to speak. I think if you're ignorant, you should be humble and you should listen. But he seems to be putting this stuff forth as though he knows something, and he clearly doesn't.
Right. See, I think that you and I are looking at the explanation for this. We agree about the facts, but we're looking at the explanation a bit from different ends. You're seeing it this way. Tucker is trying to be a knowledgeable fellow, and he doesn't know, and he hasn't really bothered to research. And so he's coming up with foolish and misguided ideas. I don't think that that's how it's working at all. I think it's a little bit more the sort of the Nazi approach. And I don't mean this like Tucker's a Nazi, but I mean it like this. The Nazis didn't start out by trying to understand the Bible. The Nazis started out by saying, okay, we need to get the votes of the Lutherans and the Catholics in Bavaria. So we need to figure out some sort of Christianity that's going to work for us. Now, we don't like Christianity and we don't like Jews. So the only Christianity that's going to work for us is if we kick the Old Testament and the Jews out of the Bible. So let's come up with this positive Christianity and peddle that. That's a way ultimately to achieve our objective, our prior objective, which is to get the Jews out of the Bible. And any Christianity that we are okay with has got to be that way. I think for Tucker, the same thing. Tucker starts out, his starting premise is, I don't like Israel, I don't like the Jews. So now I need a theological explanation which kind of gets them out of the Bible. And so if Christian Zionism is bad, then that means that there's been a Christian plot to kind of wed the Old Testament to the New, to produce a continuity between the two. I need to put a kind of division between those two. And therefore, this point of view appeals to me. So it's really ultimately not about getting the Bible right or speaking to authoritative people. I think the political motive is driving the theological position.
Okay, well, I just want to say, most people would know this. In my book on Bonhoeffer, I go in depth to what you just said. The Nazi project of getting Jewishness out of Christianity, which is insane. It's like saying we want to get the color blue out of green. We're going to do it. We're going to have a blue-free green. Ladies and gentlemen, it cannot be done. There is no greenness without some blue. The idea that you can take Jewishness and the Jews and Israel out of Christianity is preposterous. So that's precisely what Hitler and the Nazis were doing. So for historical context, not looking good, folks. That's precisely what the Nazis were doing. But my question, Dinesh, is why do you suppose, because this mystifies me, why would Tucker be starting from that position that he doesn't like the Jews? Where's this coming from? I am absolutely baffled.
Well, one of the themes that I explore in The Dragon's Prophecy, my latest film, unrelated to Tucker, is the idea that anti-Semitism cannot be explained entirely in a natural way. And I say this because I've been on a bunch of these podcasts with these secular, Israeli guys. And I say to them, I go, what's your explanation for anti-Semitism? And they basically go, we don't get it. They're like, we don't understand why through history and to the present we are so hated. The best explanation that they can come up with is essentially envy. In other words, successful groups draw a certain amount of envy. But I think you and I would agree, Eric, that while envy might account to some degree for anti-Semitism worldwide, it can't possibly account for the fullness of the phenomenon. So in the film, we say that there needs to be also a supernatural explanation, an explanation that goes beyond the natural. And we offer one that has to do, by and large, with the ongoing clash between good and evil, between the devil and God. And it's essentially the idea that the devil picks on God's chosen people to get his ultimate revenge on God. Now, all of this is really at a rather kind of broad level, but I think what it's a way of saying is that we should not look for natural explanations where sometimes none is really available. The interesting thing with Tucker is I think there is a lot of political ambition driving all of this. And by that, I mean is that it is an attempt, I think, to create a pivot point for the MAGA movement and for the Republican Party. It relies on capturing institutions like Heritage and Turning Point USA, and it relies on leverage with J.D. Vance. So it is not in that sense a preposterous project. It has some plausibility to it. And under a certain set of circumstances, it could work.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, the film, where can people see The Dragon's Prophecy? How can people see The Dragon's Prophecy? Because you do go into this. I have the privilege of being in the film. It's very important what you deal with there. So how can people see it?
So the film is available on streaming and DVD. You can get it straight. The DVD is from Amazon. The website is thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. That shows you the streaming platforms. It's, by the way, just went up on the Angel Studios platform. So if you are a member of Angel, you can watch it there. In a month or so, the film will also be available on iTunes and Amazon, so it'll be very accessible and easy to watch. But the dragonsprophecyfilm.com is a good place to start.
During the horrors of the Holocaust, Corrie ten Boom and her Dutch family, as told in her classic book, The Hiding Place, risked everything to shelter Jewish neighbors in their home. They were betrayed and sent to concentration camps, yet Corrie survived and went on to preach forgiveness and hope around the world. That same redemptive spirit lives on in Ten Boom Coffee. Working with Agro Cafe, an Israeli ag tech company, Ten Boom Coffee helps farmers around the world increase their harvests by 60%, improving both the quality of their beans and the quality of their lives. So every cup you pour becomes part of a legacy, one that stands for courage, kindness, and redemption. Visit tenboomcoffee.com. That's tenboomcoffee.com. Taste the goodness that changes lives. Use the code ERIC and save 10%. tenboomcoffee.com. Use the code ERIC.
Okay, and one of the reasons that it's a wonderful film is that you deal with what we've just been talking about, what you just brought up. There's no doubt in my mind, zero doubt, that the explanation for anti-Semitism is diabolical. It is satanic. God loves the Jews, chose the Jews. Now, of course, that's complicated, but if you want to know what is the explanation for this, what is all this Jew hatred? What is this? It, to me, proves that the devil hates what God loves. We Christians believe that the Lord chose the Jewish people, created the Jewish people, so that out of those people, he would bring his Messiah, who would enable the entire world beyond Israel to worship the God of the Jews. It's the most beautiful story. It is a beautiful story. And so what we're talking about here is a satanic hatred of the Jews, which to me proves that the Jews are special, because there is no other explanation. But I still wonder, with somebody like Tucker, why would he buy into this? I find it, I mean, it's one thing to say it has a spiritual explanation. I agree with that. But I still don't quite get why he would buy into this or why he would have an animus toward the Jews. I don't understand it.
I mean, the way I try to think about it is I reject the idea that Tucker is doing this for money. Tucker is from an affluent family. He has a very large following, which he can monetize. He does not need Qatar to pay his electric bill. So whether or not he's on the payroll, I don't know. But the truth of it is, I don't think that's his real motive. I do take more seriously Tucker's idea that he was attacked and perhaps somehow overtaken by a demon. This has actually not gotten close scrutiny, I think, because some people just dismiss it out of hand. They think it's just laughable and absurd. You and I don't dismiss it out of hand because we believe that demonic attacks and spiritual warfare are real. I've looked at the sort of demon reports from Tucker. He's given about 3 different versions of what happened to him. And with each version, there is new details. I think when you put it all together and combine all the versions, it doesn't really make sense. So I don't actually know what's going on. If someone tells me I'm attacked by a demon, I tend to believe them. But on the other hand, you also have to be a little skeptical when people are talking about these things. It's kind of similar if someone says, I just witnessed a miracle. My arm grew 6 inches. You'd be like, all right, well, can I see a photo of your arm before? Can I see a photo of your arm now? Let me see if I can see some noticeable difference. So in other words, a certain measure of critical scrutiny, I think, is very justified here. But I don't write that off. In fact, when I was on Roseanne Barr's podcast, it was pretty funny because she's like, oh, no, she goes, the demonic explanation is real. Tucker needs an exorcism. She's like, I even know the name of the demon. I'm like, Roseanne, what's the name of the demon? She's like, oh, no, there's a name for the demon of anti-Semitism in the sort of rabbinic literature. And she told me what it is, Eric. I can't recall it now.
Well, Dinesh, I have considerable knowledge of the demonic and that spiritual world. And I know many people who know infinitely more than I do about it. And it's because of my friendship with them, my friend Ken Fish, and many others, that I take this very seriously. And so I guess my question would be, why in the world would someone like Tucker Carlson, whom I have respected and liked, why would he make something like this up? In other words, I find it an extremely high bar to believe that he would make something like this up out of whole cloth. I don't see him as some kind of unhinged liar. So, I mean, you actually think that he would just have made it up?
Well, look, people do have, we even say in colloquial discourse, someone has a demon. And in colloquial discourse, it means that you could have a perfectly normal person, but then they are, let's just say, they're a serial killer, or they're a pathological adulterer, or there's some aspect of their life that is radically inconsistent with the rest of it. And when it comes out, it's a complete shock. I mean, think of all the people, when they go to the neighbor's house and they say, did you believe the guy living? They're like, oh no, there's a great guy, So what I'm getting at is there is a hidden dimension, I think, to people sometimes. With the Tucker episode, look, there are really 3 possibilities, right? One is he made it up. Number 2 is he had some kind of a psychotic episode. I mean, you see all these people humorously saying, well, he always keeps talking about the dogs in his bed. Well, the dogs did it. So the second possibility is some sort of a hallucinatory or psychotic episode. And the third possibility is there really was a demon. Now, the reason I think the whole thing is weird to me is this is the story in brief. Tucker basically says this happened to him, right? He wakes up horrified. Now, he doesn't just go back to sleep. He goes outside. And in the latest detail, his wife gets up and they speak about it. And then weirdly, nobody, cleans up his wounds, no bandages, nothing. He apparently goes right back to sleep. And then he wakes up and he, quote, wonders if it's a dream. Now, again, if something happens and you go right back to sleep, you can wonder if it's a dream. But if something happened to me, let's say a home invasion, I woke up, I went outside, my wife came, we had a conversation. Tucker even says he read some of the Bible. And then I say I went back to sleep and I woke up and was really surprised to see blood on the sheets. I mean, that is unbelievable in the literal sense of the term. You can't really believe it. It doesn't make any sense.
Interesting. I think I disagree with you, but I at least have a better idea of how it's possible that there would be confusion. I think what happened. Again, I don't know what his motive would be to make something like that up, and I do think when he reported on it at first a year or so ago, I actually texted him because I know people who have tremendous wisdom and maturity about this who can pray for you. This is serious. I mean, this is a serious thing. People ought not to take these things lightly. And so I still am not convinced that he would make it up. I do think that the idea that he would make it up is it's far crazier to me that he would completely make it up than that there's truth to it. But I guess we can put that aside for a moment. What I still don't understand is why he would, I hate certain neologisms like platform, but the Fuentes thing is one thing. I mean, Fuentes is so despicable. It just breaks my heart that he has such a big following. But people like the historian Cooper, I guess, who are making, making the villain of World War II to be Churchill. There's always truth in every lie. I have always myself wondered how sick that we have to ally with the demonic Joseph Stalin to defeat Hitler. I mean, there's a conversation to be had there. Okay. But there's something about the way that Tucker has done this. And it does, I'm sorry to say, remind me of the way Candace goes about it. There's a level of sloppiness, and it's taking advantage of the naivete and ignorance of one's audience. That's what I see going on. And none of that makes sense to me, why he would be pivoting in this bizarre direction. You say he doesn't need the money. I agree, but I don't understand why he would be pivoting in that direction.
Well, the short look, I'm just applying, Eric, the logic of Occam's razor. The reason he's pivoting in that direction is that is his direction. Right? In other words, we start off with the idea that he is going some other way, and you're like, I don't know why he made a swerve in the road and went in this direction. Well, maybe that's where he wanted to go. And look, there is an eerie consistency to what he's saying. Take let's identify the 7 or 8 positions that Tucker has taken that are sharp departures from anything that mainstream conservatives or MAGA would believe. And if you put them all together, you ask, are these pointing in a single direction? Answer, yes. And what is that direction? The direction is basically that the Jews are the bad guys and the enemies of the Jews are not so bad. There's not a single position that Tucker has taken, a renegade position that departs from this model. It's all aimed at magnifying the sins of the Jews. That's why Netanyahu was, quote, pure evil. And Tucker will not even say Hamas is pure evil. That's why the Christian Zionists are the people he hates the most. Now, these are again, not the words of a 23-year-old who doesn't know what he's saying and everything's a hyperbole. These are the words of a pretty measured guy who's been around 3 decades in American politics. And so you have to pay him the respect of saying, this is a guy who actually knows what he's doing. He's not that stupid.
Folks, listen, if you've been injured in an accident or someone you love has been, this is something you really need to hear. I've been talking with the team over at Legal Help Center, and they're absolutely committed to helping people just like you understand your rights and figure out what your case may truly be worth. And here's what sets them apart. When you choose Legal Help Center, you're getting a free consultation, no upfront costs whatsoever, agents available 24/7, a connection with a qualified local attorney, and clear guidance so you actually understand your rights. In other words, they make the entire process simple, professional, and genuinely helpful. So here's what to do. Call 800-575-9120. That's 800-575-9120. Or go to LegalHelpCenter.com. Find out how much money you may qualify for. Don't wait. Don't try to go it alone. Certainly don't attempt to become your own lawyer. Let the professionals at Legal Help Center handle this for you. Legal Help Center, helping you know your rights and what your case is really worth.
Okay. Well, I want to reiterate, and since we're speaking about films, folks, the Bonhoeffer film is available via Amazon. You can rent it for $4.99. It is a great film, and it gives you some insight into what Dinesh and I are talking about. But Dinesh, this isn't a good look for Tucker. In other words, what he's doing, there's tremendous irony here. I mean, the reason I bring up Bonhoeffer is because Tucker just recently made an absolutely crazy statement about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, saying that, Bonhoeffer went beyond Christianity because, once he decided Hitler's Hitler, he had no choice but to kill him. I mean, he was making like 5 confusing, contradictory points at once. But the bottom line is he seems to be allying himself with the pro-Hitler contingent. I mean, it's bizarre. The Nazis, as we just said, were clearly trying to get rid of Judaism and to kind of create some sort of Christianity that doesn't include Judaism, which is a preposterous project. It's insane. But he seems to be doing something like that. And I think the point we have to make is that that's clearly what the devil would want to do. Because if you're able to push Judaism and Israel and Jews out of Christian faith, what you have done is you've destroyed Christian faith. That is the devil's goal.
Of course, I agree. And also, I think if we look at Tucker, and with Tucker, you have to also look at the positions of his guests, because he generally, with rare exceptions, has guests that reflect his own point of view. He brings out of them things that he wants to say, but he lets them say it. And that way they're the ones who are kind of on the hook for it. But he had the guest that you mentioned earlier who said, well, maybe we should have allied with Hitler against Stalin. That's point number one. Nick Fuentes, of course, is infamous for posting a meme which says he is on, quote, Team Hitler. Right? So the Bonhoeffer critique is not a one-off. Again, it's part of a pattern of sort of not only rewriting, revisionism is even one thing, but inverting the history of World War II. And that is of a pattern with the theme that I mentioned a moment ago. The Jews are always in the wrong, and the enemies of the Jews are always in the right. So whether the enemies of the Jews are the Nazis or whether they are Hamas, they have to be sanitized because they are fighting the true bad guys who are the Jews. I mean, when you put it all together, there is, in fact, a consistency here. And I think part of it is that you and I, because we're well-meaning and we've known Tucker, are very reluctant to follow the actual logical path, which is lighted by Tucker's multiple statements. And we're like, oh, no, he can't possibly mean that. What could be going on? Is he having a bad day? Is he suffering from an illness? Has he been misled by a friend? No, none of those things are true. The most obvious explanation is he's going the way that he wants to go.
That's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to me. I don't know what to make of it. It's at least very, very confusing. But we're at a dark moment in the culture when we have figures like him and, of course, Candace saying things and misleading many, many, many people. It's a terrible thing. So, Dinesh, let me just close by saying thank you to you for being a loud, clear voice for truth in the midst of the madness. There's so much else I want to talk to you about. At some point, I want to talk to you about your experience of persecution, as putting it mildly, at the hands of the Obama administration, which is so wicked, so wicked. I want to hear your version of that story because I think it's important for my audience to hear that story, to know what the politicized left, what the Obama administration did to you, how evil it is, just for context on what we're going through right now. But we'll do that another time. Dinesh, thank you so much.
Eric, always a pleasure.
This Christmas, as we celebrate the Super Centennial coming up, Super Centennial 250th, there's no way, better way to support it than by supporting my friend, an American hero, Mike Lindell. He's one of the main sponsors on this program. He's the man behind My Pillow. He put his money where his mouth is. Some of you know this if you've watched the program. He stood up for the country. He was unfairly canceled by the big box stores. So I want us to stand with him. So please go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code ERIC to save big on pillows, sheets, slippers, everything you need for Christmas comfort. You'll sleep great, save big, celebrate freedom with MyPillow. MyPillow.com. Use the code ERIC.